Call this meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for being here. If you will rise for the invocation by Councilman Holland.
Let us pray. Oh, Father God, we thank you for the people that have showed up for this meeting here tonight in attendance. We pray for your blessings. And you pray you bless us with wisdom, knowledge, and common sense, help us to make wise and smart decisions through your guidance and your supervision and your leadership. Oh, Father God, we pray and thank you for all that you've done to continue to do for us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, you've all received the minutes from our last meeting on March 14th. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilman McCoy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. Okay, do we have anyone here tonight for public comment?
Yes, Dan Cannon.
Okay, hold on just one second. We're going to do tax appeals first. Tax appeals will run from 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock tonight. Is anyone here tonight who has?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, if someone does come in, they will take precedence. We'll allow them to go first, but we'll go with public comment now.
Dan Cannon.
Evening.
Evening.
I might need 10 or 15 seconds beyond 3 minutes.
15 seconds, you think? Sure.
Once again, new business on tonight's agenda worries the heck out of me. Here we are in the middle of an election for 2 city council seats in Seaford, and the current majority of the city council, along with the mayor, seem intent on making a major change to Seaford's charter. An elimination of special elections referenda in which voters must approve or disapprove some major borrowing and spending proposals. This is a terrible, undemocratic idea and amounts to the elimination of prudent and timely voter control over major borrowing and spending. Make no mistake, timeliness is important. For years, I've been told that if you don't like what mayor and city council are doing, vote them out of office. However, this solution to control currently planned borrowing and spending without a referendum approval is virtually laughable, as such control would take years or could take years. In contrast, the current referendum process could stop excessive and unwise borrowing and spending by the mayor and city council in its tracks. Referenda requiring voter approval on pocketbook issues would virtually mandate that supporters of the proposal on the city council would have to go to the community and report to the community on its merits, not something the 5 people voting at one meeting need to be worried about if the charter change were to be approved. There remain glaring deficiencies in the amended proposal, including no referendum to win voter approval. Approval would be by 5 people only. No borrowing limits. No specification of or limitation on quote-unquote critical needs. No specified borrowing caveats from the revolving loan funds. Simply put, this ill-considered proposed change in the City of Seaford's charter would take significant power to borrow and spend unlimited funds out of the hands of voters and put that power in the hands of just 5 individuals on the City Council. This action would be imprudent, undemocratic, and fiscally unwise, especially in light of existing City of Seaford plans to borrow millions and spend millions on wastewater treatment upgrades and expansion, likely using state or federal revolving loan funds. Whether all the wastewater treatment plans are critical or necessary or not, the current proposal to eliminate voter approval by referendum would allow 5 members of the City Council unlimited borrowing and spending approval power. There will be no elections in time to stop such action. Therefore, the current proposal to eliminate voter approval for borrowing and spending through referendum is a step in the wrong direction for Seaford. The voice of Seaford should reflect the will of 5,000, not 5 voters. Therefore, the proposed charter changes should be rejected outright tonight. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody else here for public comment? Jay?
Good evening, men.
Good evening.
I'm going to be a lot more brief, but I have a concern with this same number 4 under new business. I'm sure that there's a reason for this, and I'm thinking that we're probably going to hear more about it. But my first reaction is kind of similar to what you just heard. When I look at the people sitting in front of me tonight, I think I know all of you well enough that most of you I'd probably trust my own checkbook. But what I really have a concern with is after, because there could be a different council sitting in front of us that may not be as prudent as the group here. So I'm wondering if there could be some consideration of putting a cap on this. There's probably a good reason, probably emergencies or something that this is being thought through. And again, maybe there could be a cap put on this, because I really don't think that we want to totally handicap. We entrust all of you to represent our city. And I think there's some merit in that as well. So through the comments tonight, I'm hoping I can get more clarity as to why, and maybe a more prudent consideration for a cap on this amount of money. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public comment?
No.
Okay. Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting and open up our public hearing. I'll invite up our building official, Mr. Mike Bailey, to lead us through this.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So for public hearing, item number 1, it's for Mr. Brad Taylor. He's requesting a final site plan review for the construction of 3 buildings to be built on Venture Drive. Tax map and parcel is 331-5.00-4.22 to include a medical office, auto repair shop, and a warehouse space. This is the property out on Venture Drive, just across from the FedEx site. Got an outline there in red. It's just a vacant lot. Currently, it's pretty much the existing conditions. We just did receive, this is the site plan. It's kind of hard to see, but I did on the next slide zoom in a little bit and highlight the building so they're easily seen. So it's one 9,600 square foot auto repair building. That's the building to the left, outlined in blue. One 6,400 square foot medical building. It's the building to the right. It's a little on the right side of the site. And one 5,400 square foot warehouse, and that's the building on the bottom of the picture there. They're proposing 51 parking spaces, and 51 are the required number by code. And Mr. Taylor did receive variances for the uses here for the auto repair shop in 2020, and another one for the medical use in 2022. And the project does meet all the area and bulk requirements for the M1 zone. And they did include a little front elevation there of the buildings, what they would look like as a rendering when they're constructed. It's a site data table from the plans. Goes over everything I just did, the square footages and the parking, things like that. And it does require additional approvals from the State Fire Marshal, which we did receive, Sussex Conservation District, and the City Engineer for Stormwater, which we're still working through some comments with the project engineer. We're anticipating those approvals shortly.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
What, we recently enacted in the C3 zone a ban on the sale of medical marijuana. How is that affected in this location?
This is a physician's office.
Okay.
It's
zoned M1.
It's zoned M1. So it's,
so I think the ordinance read C1 and C2. So, and would it exclude the sales of marijuana?
So the prohibition that the zoning change that the council made, I believe it was last year,
Yeah.
it was in C3 zoning ordinance. And the uses are listed in C3 zone. And it specifically prohibits the sale of marijuana, recreational marijuana, marijuana in any form, and then drug treatment facilities that issue Suboxone or methadone.
Right. So I want to limit my comments to M1 then, let alone R zones. My assumption is, so it's only excluded throughout the city in C3.
Currently, yes, sir.
Well, I just, don't want to offer a wedge, a door opener to proliferate that type of activity throughout the city, except, in the C1 and C2 area.
Understood.
That might be something we have to bring back through. All right, any other questions from council? Any questions from the public?
Moving on to public hearing number 2. This is for KRM Seaford 1 LLC. They're requesting a final site plan review for the construction of 2 70,000 square foot one-story buildings with paved parking and loading docks to be located at Lot 1 Opportunity Drive. Tax map and parcel is 331-5.00-4.29. This is the existing conditions, vacant lot right now. I've got it highlighted in blue in the new Western Sussex Business Campus. And this is the overall site plan showing the site there with the 2 buildings and loading docks in between them, parking surrounding the site. And I did zoom in, and it's rotated from that last view so you could get a better idea on the actual site there. So it's 2 70,250 square foot one-story buildings with paved parking and loading docks. They're proposing 187 parking spaces and 141 are the required number. It meets all the area and bulk requirements for the M1 zone. And we did have a note regarding the stormwater on this site and other sites in the park out there. Would you like me to read it into the record, or?
Would you mind? Mike?
Yes, if I can read the screen. So the note, and we're going to add this to the park plans and have that recorded on the cover. For stormwater management for the Western Sussex Business Campus is intended to be managed by on-site regional stormwater management facility within the business campus. The stormwater management report for this project identified certain impervious coverages for each lot within the project. If a future development project proposes to exceed the previously accounted for impervious coverage, the future development must provide on-site stormwater management for the additional impervious proposed prior to discharging to the on-site regional stormwater management facility. There are set discharge limits to each catch basin so as not to overload each stormwater pipe. Future development projects shall endeavor to meet these requirements. If unable, may be required to further study and implement improvements to the regional pond or other measures to allow proper functioning of the stormwater system of the city. So this site is at their capacity, 50% impervious coverage. So that identified some issues for future sites and this site if they want to continue to develop it. That note will be added to our plans to cover any future construction to make people aware of what they may run into. This site will also require additional approvals from State Fire Marshal, which we received. Sussex Conservation has been received, and the city engineer for stormwater, which I believe Ben is getting ready to release that as well.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Are there any questions from the public? Okay. All right, so we're going to close the public hearing and we'll reopen our regular meeting, and Mike will walk us back through this.
So we'll go back to item number 1. These are the findings of facts. It's for Mr. Brad Taylor. The property is located on Venture Drive. That is tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.22. Requesting preliminary site plan review for the construction of 3 buildings to be built to include a medical office, auto repair shop, and a warehouse space. 9,600 square foot auto repair building, a 6,400 square foot medical building, and a 5,400 square foot warehouse. We're proposing 51 paved parking spaces, and Mr. Taylor received variances for the auto repair use in 2020 and another for the medical use in 2022. Project does meet all the area and bulk requirements for the M1 zone, and we do have approvals from the fire marshal, and Sussex Conservation and the city engineer for stormwater are shortly coming. Planning and zoning did make a favorable recommendation for approval at their March 2nd meeting.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the request of Brad Taylor for final site plan approval for the construction of 3 buildings to be built on Venture Drive, tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.22 to include the medical office, auto repair shop, and the warehouse space as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Do we have a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Okay, are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland.
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy.
Yes, based on findings of fact.
Councilman King.
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson.
Yes, based on findings of facts.
And Councilman Santos.
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. For item number 2, for KRM Seaford 1 LLC, located on Opportunity Drive in the Western Sussex Business Campus, tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.29. The zoning is M1 light industrial, and they're this is a final site plan review for the construction of 2 70,250 square foot one-story buildings with paved parking and loading docks. They're proposing 187 paved parking spaces, and it meets the area and bulk requirements for the M1 zone. And that's the same note I just read into the record regarding the stormwater ponds. And it requires approvals from the State Fire Marshal's Office, which we received, Conservation District we received, and the City Engineer for stormwater. Planning and zoning also made a favorable recommendation at their March 2nd meeting.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to approve the request of KRM Seaford 1 LLC for final site plan approval for the construction of 2 70,000 square foot one-story buildings with paved parking loading docks to be located at Lot 1, Opportunity Drive, tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.29 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll yield.
I'll second it.
Councilman Santos seconds. Are any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Santos?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman King?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to rush through that too much. The city has been working on that piece of property for 25 years. It was 3 years ago that we created a partnership with Sussex County Council to help us finance that property and make that happen, and the governor came along and helped support it as well. And we're coming up on a date just 2 years ago that we sold half of it to KRM, so we've picked up speed, and we have been working really, really hard to see this happen. So we're super excited and glad you guys are here. We're excited about the jobs that are going to come to Seaford because of it. So thank you for sticking to it, staying with us. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to new business number 1, and it's the parking on east side of Hall Street. Chief's going to present.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, city manager. Thank you for having me tonight.
Evening.
Earlier this month, city manager received a request from the Heritage Jewelers owner to eliminate the parking directly in front of the Heritage Jewelers. Actually, she requested to extend it further down beyond her property line. However, we did an on-site inspection, and what we found is the West Stein Highway down to the very south end portion of the Heritage Jewelers property line is zoned commercial, and from there south is residential. There's West Manor Apartments just south of Heritage Jewelers where there's tractor trailers that have been parking. We've been receiving complaints all over, different areas for parking, but particularly on Hall Street. And when tractor trailers get cited, they tend to pull up and park in the commercial area in front of the jewelry store, which hinders the visibility of drivers pulling out of that parking lot. And as you can see, we drove up in there just, a week ago or so, and you literally do have to pull out probably 4 feet or so, even without any traffic parked right there, just because telephone poles and shrubbery, much less a vehicle or a tractor trailer. So our recommendation tonight is to paint the curbing at their request in front of the jewelry store on the east side of Hall Street, from the south side of their exit entry location to the south side of their property line, yellow for no parking. City manager, I believe, talked to Public Works as well. We're mindful that parking is a commodity within the city. This is a matter of traffic safety. We have cited tractor trailers as recently as last week again, and folks parking the wrong way. So that would be our recommendation. There may be some need for some rezoning, to look at some rezoning issues down the road, but for now, we believe that this would solve that safety problem.
Okay, are there any questions for the chief in regards to this? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I'm inclined to agree with this request, although I would hope that the city administration and the council would be able to consider modifying the code and parking. I think it's clear that the intent is not to have overnight parking of 18-wheel trucks on city streets. So I think something needs to be done to address the code and the ordinances about parking on these streets. So I would hope that, because what I foresee is that's just going to move them down to the next property. You have a yellow marker, and then they're just going to go down in front of Robbins Building.
Robinson Real Estate.
Yeah. And then when, that's going to cause them to make a request for a yellow curb, and then it'll just move all the way down.
Yeah.
And then it'll move across the street.
Yeah.
So I foresee, and then it'll move to another street that's in a commercial zone.
Yeah.
Maybe Phillip Street.
I don't disagree, and there is another, it's not on here, but we could consider just doing an extended yellow line and maybe just going halfway down. The problem is under 8215 of our parking code for trucks in that zoning district, it's not even a matter of overnight parking because they're not open overnight. They can legally park on the street in a commercial zoned area, which this is. And when we cited the tractor trailer just last week, the very next day, they were parked right up there blocking their view. So I can understand their concern.
And that's why I
Yeah.
say that, once you
Yeah,
once you whack that mole, it's going to pop up somewhere else, and
Agreed.
you're going to get a request for another yellow. And parking is at a premium, so we need
Absolutely.
to do something
yeah,
to change the code, because it's legal for them to park there, but if they move back 100 feet, it's not,
yeah.
on the same street. So I think we got some work to do
Yes, sir.
to try to
I agree.
fix
And
that.
I did do a little bit of a crash study there. I think there was a total of 3 or 4 crashes on Hall Street in the commercial zoned area, but further up north, obviously where they're pulling in and out onto that roadway from the businesses. And it's been probably 2 years since the last crash up there.
Oh.
So it's not anything extensive down that way, but you can see that it is a problem. It is blocking the view of folks pulling in and out at times.
So I would hope that this would be a temporary measure and not a permanent measure until we could get some studies done and address the core issue
I agree.
of overweight, or not overweight, but heavy commercial vehicles parking
Yeah.
on the street.
Once that gets addressed, maybe we could go back and allow parking and just come back maybe midway.
Oh, they might have an event and need parking on
Yeah.
the street.
Correct. But for now, even if a tractor trailer pulled on the southern end of that yellow, you can't see what's coming. You're literally in the middle of the roadway.
Okay, any other questions from council? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So, Chief, just to kind of piggyback on what Vice Mayor Henderson alluded to. So enforcement, I think, is critical, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could paint everything yellow.
Yeah.
If no one's out ticketing and enforcing, then I think it's just, in my opinion, kind of a waste of time. With that being said, I know a lot of the rigs they're not owner operated, they're kind of working for someone else. So what does that process look like for the police, if they're dispatched to go out, somebody's parking where they shouldn't be parking, what does that process look like?
The citation, and actually, just so I could pass this around, but we have what's called Power DMS, and this is an informational bulletin. This went out to my staff because we have had a problem in Hall Street. We've issued citations, quite a few parking citations just in the last couple months. People parking the wrong way. And it's not just tractor trailers, commercial vehicles or anything 6,000 pounds or heavier, which I think is important to note because that could literally be a dually, right? So people that are just private folks could technically be in violation, and that means you can't even park in your driveway. So there's extensive things, I think, reviews that have to be done to this policy or to the code. But this gives our folks directions of how to handle it, because there's a way when you have a city ordinance, it's not the state of Delaware, it's the city of Seaford, so they have to change it from a DE to an SE, and they have to do search words trucks. And a lot of the young folks, half of our department, are less than 4 years on the job, essentially. And so they didn't know how. We constantly are doing training for our officers. And this was just one of those things where we had a young officer that couldn't find it. So we're working with them constantly to find it. They're issued state citations with no problem. That same day, we issued a state citation, it's $100 and some fine, for parking the wrong way. Versus a tractor trailer would go to the company. It's the individual registered owner of the vehicle, whether it's the private person or a conglomerate.
Sure. No, but I mean, my point being, if that truck is owned, let's say somebody in Maine owns the truck. Somebody that lives in that community is driving the truck.
Yeah.
So how is that ticket issued if no one's in the truck?
To the company.
To the company.
Yes,
Is
sir.
it mailed to the
Registered
company?
owner. It goes onto that window. It's an issued citation for ordinance violation, and it's up to the owner of that truck, because it'll be flagged on that tag, on that registration plate. So if they don't pay it and we run the tag, it's going to be flagged, just like any other registered vehicle for having an outstanding fine.
And that's anywhere in the state?
Yep.
Or just, okay, good.
Yeah, matter of fact, we've gotten really good traffic stops from folks not paying their fines.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the request to eliminate a portion of on-street parking on the east side of Hall Street in front of 555 North Hall Street as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Henderson. Is there a second?
Councilman King, I'll second the motion.
Okay, are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. All right, next we have Hooper's Landing.
Yes, our golf course, golf cart fleet. If I could ask Mike Connor, our golf pro, to come up and potentially answer any questions that council might have. What you have in your package is a letter from the PGA head golf professional, Mike Connor. And what he's laying out here is that the city currently owns 60 golf carts. We purchased them in 2 rounds of purchasing in 2015 and 2016. The life expectancy of a electric golf cart is about 8 years. The first 4 years, you use the batteries, then you have to replace the batteries for another 4 years, but then the chassis starts to fall apart. The items on the golf cart start to fall apart. They wear out at that point. So we are to the point in this life cycle of this purchase that we need to replace the fleet of 60 golf carts. Due to the long lead time items, the golf professional has worked with some vendors, and he's saying to us, hey, these things, we need to order them now to be able to hopefully get them in the summer of 2024, which would be on our normal replacement cycle. He did provide some pictures of the general fleet. So the request of council this evening is to authorize staff to publish a bid to replace these golf carts on their normal replacement cycle. There would be the bid placed for 60 of them. We would offer for trade-in the 60 that we have. So this budgetary-wise is, I'm just going to give you some general numbers. The new ones would be in the $400,000 range, and then the trade-ins, we're hoping to get somewhere in the $100,000 range, so about a net of a $300,000 purchase. We have been putting away reserve funds from the golf course, and currently, I should say as of 3/23/23, the balance in that reserve fund is $694,505. So if council were to authorize us to issue this bid and place this, we would anticipate receiving these in the summer of 2024. Mr. Connor, did I miss any salient points that you might want to add?
No, not at this time. I mean, the reason for the 2024, like he was speaking about, the companies, at least two out of the major three companies right now are looking at anywhere between 12 and 18 months back order on the vehicle. So for those carts to be ordered, you get them by June, it's something that needs to be done soon.
I will add, I apologize. The majority of the fleet currently is electric. I believe it's majority electric, 8 or gas. The recommendation from Atkins Management and the golf professional is to go with gas for the.
Isn't that amazing how that is swung all the way around?
Yeah, and you had some specific reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, so the gas fleet is, in all aspects, more durable.
Yeah.
One, you don't have to put another $800 or $900 in each cart every 4 years for batteries, because you've got 6 batteries, 24-volt batteries in each electric cart currently. And they're actually moving from the 24-volt batteries to lithiums and electric carts now, so a lot of the companies are not even providing that type of electric cart. And with the lithium batteries, the prices are extremely higher than your gas carts currently.
Okay. All right, are there any questions from council? Yes, Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions. If I remember correctly, it wasn't that long ago when we actually purchased, I believe you had an area that closed, a golf course that closed, and we ended up purchasing golf carts
You're correct.
from you, and then we brought them. So
Yeah.
is that part of the fleet that were?
It is.
Yeah, so the 2015s were the ones that were purchased from the Rookery North Golf Course. And when we brought them back, it was 2 years ago, I believe.
Yep.
We put brand new batteries in them at that time. But they were the original model is the 2015 model.
Okay. And replacing 60 golf carts, what does your fleet of golf carts look like? Like, what's your total number of carts?
So
If you talk a little bit on how many are used daily and what
Sure.
that looks like.
we have 64 total in the fleet. 4 are actually owned by the management company. They're used as like last minute backups if any of these 60 are breaking down, or we're at a day where we're going through the whole fleet. Which, I mean, just this past Sunday was a nice day we had, we actually went through the whole fleet twice. So, I mean, the 60 carts is enough to, I mean, we don't need any more than that, plus the building capacity won't hold any more than that. But 60 is enough for the rotation that we have of every 9-minute tee times to be efficient enough.
Sure. Now, the 60 that we're replacing, are they at the end of the life cycle, or do they need to be replaced?
Yeah, so as Charles has mentioned, 2015s, or 20 of them are 2015s, and the other 30 or 40, which 32 are electric and 8 gas, are 2016s, which were purchased by the city in 2016. But like I said, we've all the electrics have a second round of batteries already in them. Some of them are already at the 4-year capacity of the second round of batteries. So how we did the batteries, we broke down to 32 and did 10 first year, 11 the next year, and 11 the following year to get to 32. And then when we brought in the 20 carts from the Rookery North, those were put in new batteries as well at the time 2 years ago. So right now, 10 of my carts are sitting on a 4-year cycle on the batteries. So those carts are restricted to only 18 holes. They will not make another 18 holes because of the.
But is it replacing the cart or replacing the battery?
So we replace the batteries, like I said, those timeframes. So the cart itself, no, it's not being replaced. So the chassis, the wheels, all the other components are 8 years old. You know, at least on the 2015s.
Right.
The 2016s are at 7 at this point. So it's the other components that are the major issue. I mean, you could continue to replace batteries if you want every 4 years in rotation, but your carts won't last. We're having issues now with tie rods breaking on the front ends, obviously windshields, seats. All the seats currently have, except 2 carts, have a temporary cover over them because they've all cracked out and even the temporary covers are going to start to crack over time. So these are all things that just are normal wear and tear on a cart that you come and, when you get into a 7 to 8 year old cart.
Sure. And then the last question I have, this is for our city manager. Out of that $400,000 price tag, $100,000 in trade-in value, is the managing partnership paying any of that, or is that solely 100% the responsibility of the city of Seaford?
It's the responsibility of the city of Seaford, Councilman. We provide all the buildings, in our management agreement, they provide certain things, basically labor and operational skills. We provide all the other costs. And carts are one of the items we provide.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, any other, Councilman Henderson?
I'm in agreement with the idea, but there's a facet of this. I mean, our government at the state level is really adamant on mirroring the California energy push. And they're in a push to electrify everything. And so pretty soon, it's going to be mandated that golf carts and lawn mowers and everything else be electric. And we're going to purchase these units that won't be here for another year. So what concerns me is going to order something and then the state is going to mandate that these things have to be electric.
So a couple things I'll say about that. I have not seen specifically in the draft legislation they're talking about adopting to mirror the California standard how it addresses golf carts. I'm sure it's in there. But what I will say is, as the golf professional alluded to, the new class of golf cart is what's called a lithium battery. And we're in the very early stages of shifting from a lead acid glass mat battery, which is traditional, it's what we all have in our cars, to now a lithium ion battery. In the automotive industry, there's always that issue of try not to buy cars in the first year of manufacture, try to let that manufacturing get settled out. I think if you do the life cycle of this set of carts, it puts us right at the 2030 timeline for replacement. So it lets that lithium ion technology mature and the price come down. The general pricing that we got was lithium ion at this time. Council will recall that the 60 gas-powered carts were in the $400,000 range. 60 lithium ion electric carts would be in over $500,000. So the additional cost is about $100,000 more,
Yeah.
25% more.
I get that concept. I'm just worried that we get a delivery of 60 gas-powered carts, which have a 4-year warranty, and then after the end of the warranty, if one of them needs to be replaced, we'll be forced to buy an electric one.
That could happen, depending upon where we are in the life cycle.
I'm predicting that. I mean, I'm not sure of that, but the way things are going legislatively, that's the way it looks. So I'm just,
Well, if the timing works out, okay, if we receive them in 2024 and the legislation, as I understand it, does not implement until 2030, that's 6-year time span in between. So using your scenario, 4 years, we probably could still buy gasoline for a year or two more. But I think at that point, what we would do, and Mike's going to help, Mr. Connor's going to help me here, we would do an evaluation just like we did at this point at that time. What's the best technology? What's the best vendor price? What are you seeing? Am I generally on with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would think after the 6 years, you're going to have to go through the same process. And talking with my vendor reps and everything, your resale value on cars or golf carts are better on gas right now anyway. So having this in your fleet when you do get to a point where you're going into a lithium change.
They won't be in 2030 because
Texas,
you won't be able to do anything
Texas
with
and
them.
Florida, you'll be able to
So
sell.
that's my concern, is that we have a shortened life cycle for these carts, and then we end up having to buy electric anyway sooner.
Yeah, but that whole vision could change, right? If we get a new leadership, new ideas, new thinking, I mean, that's not gonna be, couldn't be, potentially be written in stone, right?
It's possible.
Yeah.
Councilman McCoy?
I'm gonna piggyback on what Councilman Henderson was saying. If that's something to consider, in the situation we're in now, we're selling our older cars. If we spin it forward to 2030 and we have gas vehicles, in theory, those are gonna have zero value to people out there, not be able to use them, so you won't be able to resell them for anything. If we have electric vehicles,
Well, I don't.
potentially could.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think that legislation, and I've not read it, okay, we've been exposed to some of it. I don't think the legislation outlaws vehicles in the secondhand market. Because if that is the case, all of us that have vehicles
Right.
that will last past 2030
Right.
will probably be upset. But certainly we can monitor that legislation.
I guess my point being, the calculation, if the electric vehicles will be worth more in 2030 for resale value versus what gas are.
And-
Again, it's hypothetical, I
That's a
have
crystal
no
ball.
idea.
Yeah, that's a crystal ball.
But if we're talking about that conversation, and it's more expensive now to buy electric, but if you're also more valuable down the line, it's part of the equation.
I mean, that could be correct, Councilman. I don't have any insight on that.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Connor,
Yes, sir.
if you, deal with gas, would this require you to have a tank on site?
Well, we have a tank currently on
Very
site
good.
for the maintenance department. We
Okay.
may need to increase the size, because we're only fueling 8 carts currently
Right.
from that tank, and then the maintenance department's vehicles as well. So to jump all the way to 60, it may
Right.
include a little bit of an increase.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
One more.
Councilman McCoy.
For a city manager, do we know of, or are there any possible grant opportunities?
I don't know of any, not for a for-profit business like this. I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
There are grant opportunities for electric vehicle charging stations, which we've taken advantage of.
Yes.
But this is a different charger for the lithium ion and a
Yeah,
golf
no,
cart.
I
It's
mean, if there
120.
were any grant opportunities, I'm pretty sure my reps would push me towards that.
10-4.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly if council's desire is for us to issue a bid for gas and alternatively for lithium ion electric, and then evaluate the price when they come in, we certainly can do that, and that would give you some additional information in the bid documents if that is a desire of the city council.
If there are no further comments, then I'll accept the motion.
Could you clarify?
Sure.
Would you repeat what you just said?
So we have to bid this purchase, no matter what we purchase. Currently, on the table is the recommendation from the golf professional to purchase gas. And that's the way we would write the bid and publish the bid if it's approved as presented. If council desires to alternatively bid, have a second option in the bid alternate for electric carts, lithium-ion electric carts, we can certainly bid it that way and then bring back to council the comparison price for your evaluation.
Is that something that needs to be in the motion, or is that something that can be done administratively?
I'll do it a couple ways. If you approve it as presented,
Because pardon me,
Yes, sir.
it doesn't say anything in the proposed motion about whether it's gas, or it just says it in the correspondence.
yes, in the backup information, that's the presentation that was given as gas. Yeah, if it is the consensus of council that you would like the alternative bid, staff can certainly follow up with
Yeah,
that.
just include it in the motion so it's clear, I think, yeah. Any further questions? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to request to replace 60 golf carts for the Hooper's Landing Municipal Golf Course with an alternate bid with a prime bid for gas-operated and an alternate bid for electric-operated golf carts with an estimated delivery time of summer 2024.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Henderson. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Mike, thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to call up Mr. Mears, to go over the remaining ARPA funds.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
So I'm here tonight to ask for, to make a recommendation to spend some of the contingency or undesignated ARPA funds that we have left over. I identified a project of our Pine Street lift station that needs rehabilitation. That would include all new pumps, rail system, electrical, to complete rehabilitation as it needs. It's original from the 90s. We have replaced some pumps, but there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done there. So we do have around, we had a undesignated category where we were looking, keeping some money aside in case we had some overages on some projects and things, but we actually had almost $378,000 in there, plus we had some money that left over from the Route 13 sewer main project. So we have more than enough money to do the project, which I'm estimating about $300,000, and then we need some money for the engineering as well.
Okay. All right, are there any questions for Director Mears? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you. I would hope that you would strongly consider any overages, any money left over from this renovation, or I guess it's a renovation, not a replacement, to be dedicated to fire hydrant replacement around the city. There's several bagged hydrants, and it's a life safety issue, and I hope you'll strongly consider using whatever is left over towards replacing some or all of the inactive hydrants around town.
Okay. We should have plenty.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll accept the motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make a motion to approve the request from Burley Mears, Director of Public Works, to spend remaining ARPA funds on the renovation to the Pine Street lift station as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Burley. Okay, next we have approval of the Section 35 changes to the charter. You're going to walk through that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So in your package, you have draft changes to Section 35, which is the power to borrow money and issue bonds of the city charter. And the changes are there at the bottom of the page. It's short, I'll just read it into the record. It would add Clause I. The council shall be authorized to allow short or long-term debt incurred from the state or federal government revolving loan funds for critical water, sewer, stormwater, and wastewater treatment facilities to be exempt from the special election requirements set forth in Section 35 of this chapter to exercise the power aforesaid. After 2 public hearings related to the debt to be incurred, the council shall adopt a resolution to that effect by the affirmative vote of 5 members of the council. The indebtedness created under this provision shall be evidenced by notes of bonds of the city, and the full faith and credit of the city shall be determined to be pledged thereby. So that's just the addition. It would permit us to use state revolving fund, or what we generally term as SRF loans, with the city. We've used these loans several times. We have several of these on the books and have retired several SRF loans currently. So certainly I'll try to answer any questions council might have.
Questions from council?
I have one.
Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Anderson, just for public knowledge, so if I understood it correctly, if we have an let's say an emergency situation with one of our, let's say Delaney well as an example, right? It's gonna cost us $10 million to fix it. If we put that item on a referendum and it fails, there's a 2-year waiting period to put that item back on a referendum.
Right.
Is that correct?
Sir. Yeah.
Other questions? Councilman Henderson?
So, adding to what Councilman King alluded to, it really does bother me, the comments pierce my heart. But what I'm fearful of is that we lose, for whatever reason, we have a headworks or expansion or water project that is mandated to be done. And we're forced to borrow the money and we're forced to go to referendum. It fails, and we start getting fined for non-compliance. It costs the taxpayers double, because at the end of the 2 years, they say, oh, okay, well, I guess we got to do it because it's costing us X $1,000 a day for being non-compliant, which is not a certainty, but a likelihood, because environmental conditions are getting more and more and more strict. That right there gives me pause for concern that we end up just nailing, the city's going to have its feet nailed to the floor because we cannot operate, and we're going to be punished for not operating in compliance with all of these ever-increasing regulations. I'm happy with, well, I'm not happy. I would think that we would need a minimum of 2 public hearings. If not, I don't want to say after 2 because that's a charter thing. Maybe we could add the word a minimum of 2 to keep the conversation going with the public until they're fully educated about what the needs are and what it's going to cost, and what it's going to cost if we don't do it. I think we've lost, not we, but the city has, the voters have voted down a referendum before for a project that would have ended up costing nothing because the principal would have been forgiven. Not nothing, but
It's about half.
significantly less. But now that if we're going to get, if the state decides that it's mandated, we won't have principal forgiveness and we'll have to pay for the full thing. And even then, the referendum might not pass. So we're going to be in non-compliance, fined, and the money will cost us more. The project will end up costing us twice what it could have. So that is what concerns me. If that answers any questions, I'm not sure it does, but it seems like a lot of power for 5 elected officials to have, but you folks have voted us in to make these decisions, and they're heavy, they're weighty decisions. So that's where I'm at with it. I would recommend to insert the word after a minimum of.
After a minimum of 2 public
Yes.
hearings, after a minimum, at a minimum, I got you.
Any other question, Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman King mentioned the Laney well. Could the city manager provide other examples of where this has, some of the referendums where this has failed, or other examples where this could be used?
Okay, so I think as the Vice Mayor alluded to, if we have a violation at our wastewater treatment plant, and right now the Director of Public Works is here, our last upgrade to what's called ENR, Enhanced Nutrient Removal Treatment, at the time in 1998 was state of the art. There's now, there's another level of treatment that is the thing to go to. So if we fall out of compliance and we can't meet our permit requirements, then as the councilman has stated, there can be daily fines. We'll do everything we can to avoid that. But what's looming out there for us and for this plant, it's now about 25 years old. So what's looming out there is an upgrade for us, as an example. And our guys can only keep, our men and women can only keep the machinery going so long without upgrading critical infrastructure. We have sea level rise issues we have to deal with. So if the plant or other infrastructure, big lift stations, fall into disrepair, a lot of our lift stations are located near bodies of water. So if that lift station continually overflows, pumps break down, and it overflows into a body of water, you know, the cleanup is difficult. The loss of public confidence is very difficult. We, as staff, would like to avoid those things if possible. So these things can happen. You know, I will say, just to maybe add a comment, there is a limit to the indebtedness we can take on, and it states it in the charter, and I'll just read it into the record. The bonded indebtedness shall not at any time exceed the total sum of 25% of the value of real estate property situate within the limits of the city as shown on the latest assessment pending in the creation of said indebtedness. So there is a limit. Now that is a big number, right? Because all of our properties have an assessment and it's tabulated. But this is not an unlimited amount of money we're looking to do, or we would look to have under this.
What would be sorry, one more question. What would be another, a ballpark number of what that limit is right now?
I do not know. I'd have to pull that number. It's a big number because our assessments are, Kathy is here, our tax assessor. You don't know the total generally off the top of your head. Several hundred million?
It is, I just did it the other day. 100, it's just a little over $100 million.
So
It'd be a quarter of that?
I'm sorry. She's saying it's just a little over 100 million now is off the top of her head from working on the tax database recently. So there's a number out there that we would, you know, that would keep us within a reasonable amount.
I do like that this narrows things, you know, it's not just a blank check to use on whatever infrastructure that we want. It states for critical water, sewer, stormwater, and wastewater treatment facilities. And I put a lot of thought into this because, you know, that's when it's power that's been taken from the people, and but at the same time, I'd hate to put future councilmen and future mayors in a position where their hands are tied from making the decision that they think is best when it comes to regarding our critical infrastructure. So, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yeah, Councilman King.
Yep, just to kind of piggyback real quick, just to put this out, because a lot of people may not realize it, but our if I understood correctly, our current HALO is $3 million.
You're correct.
Before it goes to a referendum.
Yeah, in any one budget year, we are allowed by charter to borrow up to $3 million.
Sure.
Above that, we can go to
Sure.
referendum.
So my point being, when you look at the cost of goods, you look at the cost of supplies, I mean, $3 million today isn't the same that $3 million was 30 years ago, unfortunately. So when you look at the amount of work that you can do for $3 million, I mean, and that's not a lot. So I just wanted to put that out there so people are asking what that number was. Currently now, today, it's $3 million.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I will accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the draft changes to Section 35 of the City of Seaford Charter that would authorize the City Council to allow short or long-term debt incurred from state or federal government revolving loan funds to be exempt from the special election requirements in Section 35 of the municipal charter as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman King seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. I'd encourage you to state why you're voting yes or no. So we'll start with Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm voting yes because I believe that I want future mayor and council to have the power and authority to be able to make decisions where time is of the essence and are critical in regards to critical infrastructure.
Councilman
Purchases.
King.
With the cost of goods and services continuing to rise, the current halo of $3 million, in my opinion, is not enough in certain situations. There are some situations that arise that need immediate and swift action that cannot wait for a referendum. One example is the Delaney Street well. This is not giving anyone carte blanche because any action still has to go through your elected body for final approval. With that being said, I'm in full support of this necessary change.
Okay, Councilman McCoy.
Yes, I believe this council and previous councils have shown the ability to be good stewards of the money of the city of Seaford, make proper decisions. We want to avoid any additional expenditures, and this is a method and a motion in the proper direction. I vote yes.
Okay, Councilman Holland.
Mr. Mayor, when unseen change, sir, may happen and unforeseen that we cannot have control of, I'm in motion. The motion has been presented. I'm in favor of it as it is presented.
Okay, Councilman Henderson.
I vote yes, based on the changes made to the charter change request, because it will allow future councils to make critical decisions on critical infrastructure.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay, so this will be drafted up, sent up to our legislators to be presented as a charter change. Okay.
And it's 8 o'clock, so would you just
Do we have anyone here for tax appeal?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So will we do this at the next?
We will not, there's
We
no
will.
appeal.
There's no one here. Okay, all right. Thank you for being here, Kathy. Appreciate it. All right, next we have the bids on the front mount mower and snow blower. Do we need a snow blower?
Now wait this second.
Yes, of course we do. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager.
Good evening.
We received two bids, one from Atlantic Tractor LLC and the other from Taylor & Messick, Inc. It is based on our recommendation that actually was made by our Parks Coordinator. He filled in for me as I was out, and I trust his opinion, that we go with the low bidder of Taylor & Messick. We have worked with both of these companies before. We have a good relationship with the two of them, so I am also in favor of recommending the low bidder of Taylor & Messick.
Okay, are there any questions in regards to the front mount mower with the snow blower attachment? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Holland, I make the motion to award the bid for a front mount mower with snow blower attachment to Taylor & Messick Incorporated, the low bidder, in the amount of $23,000 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Ms. Hickey.
Thank you, Keith.
All right, next we have Mr. Bennett. Some electrical transformers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council,
Good
City
evening.
Manager.
Good evening.
Tonight, I'd like to request permission to go ahead and bid a used source well to order 9 3-phase pad mount transformers and get prices on 8 single-phase pad mount transformers before the budget is approved. This is because I've heard about other things tonight. Right now, order time on the transformers is 30 to 50 weeks. If I waited until budget was approved in June and then June rolls it over or whatever she does, it would delay it by a minimum of 14 weeks in getting them ordered. That would actually could put delivery in the FY '25 budget instead of the FY '24 budget. The three-phase transformers, the 150 kVA 12208 is our most used three-phase transformer. We need to replace one that's in use right now at Citizens Bank. It's seeping oil around the bushing. So we put that on the schedule to change it. So this would replace, I'm gonna use one I have in stock now for that. This would replace that. We would actually send that transformer back to get remanufactured, so in 4 months maybe, it would be back. The next one, the 300 kVA 12208 is our second most used pad mount transformer. This is replenished what we've used out of our stock. This one will also be one that may be asked to be used at Western Sussex Business Campus or Nylon Capital Shopping Center project. So both of those projects are, he's looks like he sped up the Nylon Capital Shopping Center and how he's gonna do it now, so this could be critical. The next one is a 150, 277, 480 volt transformer. I have one in inventory. It's actually dedicated to be used for the lift station at Seaford Village Shopping Center that they're getting ready to redo. So this would replace that one. I'm looking to order 3, so it would replace the one I have in stock and have a spare, because that's the one that's used on, I think, at least three of the lift stations in town, so you don't wanna, also there's a new well, maybe, the Hooper's Landing Golf Course has talked about a new well, and that would be also one that would go on a well. So, a 50-week delivery time, it's a year away. The 300 kVA 480 277, I have none in inventory. There's one on order that I ordered in July, so it should be in the next couple months. This is another one that could also be used at Western Sussex Business Campus and maybe at Nylon Capital Shopping Center, but probably just a business campus. And the last one on there is a 500 kVA 480 277. I have one in stock, but we need to change the one out at the old Holiday Inn, or Seaford Inn, I guess now. The cabinet's rusting out on it. The transformer's good. I know right now they're in the process of redoing that facility. So we would also send that one back to get refurbished and put a new cabinet in it. So that would, when it comes back, that would have me 2 in inventory. The single phase transformers, I can get competitive bids because it would be below the bid amount on the single phase pad mount transformers. They mainly get used in housing development. So, I'm getting ready to use a bunch of them in Bel Air single family home and Muirfield 1 phase 3. So most of what I have in stock will be going out over the next 4 to 5 months. So this will be replenishing stock in there. So.
Okay. Any questions for Director Bennett? Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Bell, what is the lifespan of a transformer?
As far as depreciation value goes, which, we look at about 40 years on a transformer. And there's a mess of them out in the field. So, we look at 40 years. Some of it depends on how much load you have on it and how much, like the 277 480, because there's a lot of motor load on those because it's more industrial. So they get pounded a little more than the small ones do. So.
Okay, any other questions for Director Bennett? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the request from Bill Bennett, Director of Electric, to place an order for electrical transformers with an estimated delivery time of spring of 2024 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Appreciate it.
Mr. Bennett.
All right, next we have some grant funding for the police department fencing project. Or you handed me that?
The chief's gonna do it.
Go ahead.
Well,
Chief stepped out.
He's out in the lobby.
He
calling,
was
yeah.
going to.
He has a presentation I want.
Oh, does he?
He does.
How about, let's skip right over to number 8. We have the appointments for election officers for 2023. We have these replaced every so often. People, it's not a life commitment, but people serve, come and go. So we've appointed some new people. If there are no questions on those appointments, I'll accept a motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the appointments of election officers in the board election for 2023 municipal election as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. Now we'll go back to number 7 for the chief.
Since I was so short a while ago, do I get a few extra minutes? No, okay. Good evening again, and thank you for entertaining me. Last year, council, if you recall, approved a DEMA grant that we were awarded in the amount of $90,000 to install a perimeter fence and cantilever automated gates around our property. This really came out of a threat assessment that we completed, and this is one of the main things that was on that threat assessment. Councilman Henderson had a connection with the League of Local Governments that led to some funding opportunities, ended up becoming a DEMA grant. So we currently have $90,000. The funds were released earlier this year. We put it out for a request for quote to 5 different fencing companies. Out of the 5 different fencing companies, we only had 2 that actually came through and submitted bids, and it's been several months. And that was Seagull Fence and Nanny Coke Fence. Both are fairly local. But in the scope of work that we put out there and what DEMA would like to see is a holistic bid. So you get a contractor, they do the entire job. So the scope of work was to include removing some old fencing, installing new fencing, tension wire underneath, removing some old slats and installing new slats and replacing old slats, and installing gates, as well as installing speaker system for our call takers to speak with vendors that are trying to come into the fence, into our gated area, as well as key fobs, our existing key fobs to the buildings. Advanced Security Systems is who we use with the city. That's who did all of our work. They did do a quote that went out to all of the vendors. And of the 2 vendors here, what you see is Seagull Fence's total bid, which included the entire scope of work, Advanced Security Solutions, was $98,852. Nanny Coke Fence, unfortunately, did not include Advanced Security Solutions work, which is the entire scope of work. So I reached out to them, I think it was March 16th, again, provided them with another quote, copy of the quote from Advanced Solutions, and we still have not received any update. I spoke with the city manager and Councilman Henderson about it, and my recommendation is that we go with the higher bid because you have a known amount. I believe the approximate quote from Advanced Security or Solutions was almost $13,000, and that's not adding any kind of contingency on top of that. So we don't know if we're going to run into additional overages. What we do know is Seagull Fence is a known amount, and so that's the recommendation tonight. 2, actually. One is to recommend Seagull, the higher priced quote, because it's all inclusive. And the second thing is to ask council's consideration to authorize the city manager to authorize up to 20% overage above the $90,000. Right now, we stand at $8,852 that the city would have to pay on top of the $90,000 grant, which is really a better quote than what we anticipated. But we also know that there could be work orders and things that go over that.
Right.
So that's the ask tonight.
Okay, are there any questions for the chief?
I have one,
Yes, sir.
just so can you go back to the other slide, please, so I understand? So Nanacoke Fence, the bid that they submitted was $15,000 less.
Not quite. Well, yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah,
And so it didn't include the work from Advanced Security Solutions.
that's correct.
So Advanced Security Solutions, without any overages, is roughly 14,000?
Not quite 13,000.
Okay. So when you add that into the equation, they're both,
They're comparable. I
Great.
think if you take what Nanny Coke Fence's bid was, which was $83,500, and you add the quote from Advanced Security, there's about a $2,500 difference. They're cheaper, but the problem is when I talk to them on the phone and I send them another copy of it, you don't know if contractors add anything on top of that in case there's some work that they didn't do, that they needed to do, that's not included by Advanced Security Solutions, plus the timing, the coordinating of the work. It's like having you have to be a manager, site manager or something to line that
Sure.
up.
And seagull fencing, there's no, it's no delay. I mean, they can, if it's approved and it moves forward, they're ready to go, they can get it done.
Yeah, Seagull Fence has completely met the scope of work as put out by the bid, the request for quote. That's them getting the electrician, them providing the removal and installation of the fencing, them coordinating to have the loops cut into the blacktop, which hardly anybody apparently wants to touch. It's a big deal. And also coordinating with the vendor that we have for our speaker system and for the automated gate system for our key fobs to access to work. So we wouldn't be responsible for any kind of miscalculation on their part, whereas, it potentially could lead to that if we went with a nanny coat, because they did not include that.
Okay.
I think they're a little concerned,
Sure. But they can do the work.
Oh, Seagull actually has done the work for Bridgeville Police Department. They've got the bid for
No, I meant like as
Milford.
far as availability. I mean, if it passes, they're ready. I mean, we don't have to wait a year,
So,
2 years, 3 years.
So no, sir. So what has to happen is, both of these are very good quality vendors. I think the city's used Nanticoke. They're highly recommended, we're not gonna get hurt with using either vendor. Let me just be clear with that. DEMA, what we have to do, if the council approves this tonight, we have to take these two quotes. We still have to take them both and send them to DEMA with our recommendation, because one met the scope of work, full scope of work, and the other one didn't. And then still, at the end of the day, they could decide to go with Nanticoke at the end of the day. I don't think they will, because I had the conversation with them. It's a public works type project, and they prefer it to be everything included in the scope of work. They don't want to be, but one purchase order. So what they'll do is, they'll look at it, they stamp it, 30 days later, we have a purchase order, we give it to the vendors, the vendor gets started. The vendor should have it done by the summertime, I would think.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman McCoy?
Chief, you said the second part of your motion would be to authorize city manager.
Yes, sir.
To go 20% over the $90,000 figure, correct?
Right now, we're at $8,852 over, but you don't know what we're gonna get into. There could be something that we didn't think about, something comes up, something that's not included, something utility doesn't get marked, you just don't know. Right now, I think that would put, 20% puts us at about $18,000. We're looking, I don't see, honestly, I think we'll be hovering somewhere probably under $10,000.
So that was my next point, was just in case, if it goes to, I think your arithmetic's correct, 108,000, put you around $10,000 buffer. If it happened to go over that, would it come back through to us and say, I need the additional expenditures?
Yes, sir. If it was a larger expenditure than what you authorized me for, we would just bring that back.
10-4, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments for the chief? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the request to fund the additional costs in excess of grant funding up to 20% above the $90,000 grant level for the police department fencing project as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Henderson. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any old business?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, reminders of meetings.
Okay, just a couple. The annual Easter egg hunt, Saturday, April 1st, this Saturday at 9 a.m. at the Seaford Sports Complex, 490 North Market Street Extended. Then we have on Monday night the Lighted Up Blue Autism Awareness event on the 3rd at 6 p.m. in Gateway Park. And then we do have the municipal election on Saturday, April 15th. This Friday is the deadline for voters to register with the Delaware Department of Elections. So, I'm sorry, it was last Friday. I apologize, March 24th. We have 3 people running for council. Councilman Santos has filed for re-election. Mike Bradley has filed for councilman, and Councilman Dan Henderson has filed for re-election. That is all I have, sir.
Okay, very good. We'll go to committee reports. Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. The following meetings were attended by city administration. They met with the city engineer and KRM's consultant regarding the stormwater accommodations at the Western Sussex Business Campus development. They attended a drinking water subcommittee meeting, and they attended a station meeting at the Seaford Police Department. They prepared, they attended the mower bid opening. They walked through the Seaford community pool to look at proposed improvements. They met with a developer proposing to develop an R3 property into subsidized housing. They purchased new license for the IT report. They purchased new licenses and upgrades for camera software. Purchased additional solid-state drives for storage server space. Assisted with office rearrangements. Began working to splice and restore functionality to the east fiber loop. Worked with the electric department to install security cameras. For the finance report, they attended contract negotiations meetings with IBW Local 126 and reviewed contract documents. They have another meeting planned for this weekend, Thursday or Friday. They prepared for the fiscal year 2024 budget. All other business is routine.
Okay, thank you very much. Next we have Police Fire, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a full report from Chief John Wilson from the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department. Under fire statistics for March 2023, there were 70 calls so far for an average of 2.5 calls per day, which is under the year-to-date average, just under. In EMS, there have been 286 calls in March for an average of 10.5 calls per day, which is slightly under the average for the total year-to-date. You'll see statistics here for in-city, out-of-city, and assists. So, pardon me, there's 100, the math seems to match up. 112 in-city calls for fire, 479 EMS calls for the year for EMS. Out-of-city calls are 64, and assists were 22. Sorry. EMS for the year is 479, 413 out-of-city, 42 assists. Significant incidents to note, there was one in-city call on March 23rd on Juniper Street for a fire, an apartment fire with portable heater, and others were assists or out of the city. Pardon me. Apparatus, ladder 87 is undergoing DOT repairs. Parts are delayed. B87 was still at Wayside for body repairs due to the accident at Tidal Health. And ambulance 87 was at Blue Hen Spring Works for a suspension issue, and Brush 87 is at a local dealership for troubleshooting of fault codes. The next training is April 5th and April 19th and May 7th at 1900 hours, where they'll do Delaware State Fire School rope rescue 1 class, and on Saturday, April 22nd at 0800, there will be a scheduled live burn on Neal School Road. EMS, as mentioned, there were some equipment issues. We are borrowing blades B71 as A71 gets repaired, and full firefighter and EMT positions are still open. There's one application that should be coming in soon. Part-time positions are still needed, and Jennifer Tunis, an EMT, just started part-time in the FTO process. She comes with a little bit of experience in 911 and works full-time in career staff or in non-emergency transports. Career staff and members have completed active assailant training with DSP in Dover, and to my understanding, the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department is the only department in the county that has voluntarily received this training so far. Under news and events, couple human interest things. Chief Wilson attended the Gemstone Ball at Atlanta Road Alliance Church, and Seaford Volunteer Fire Department also had one EMT on medical standby for the event. And further on down, I'd like to thank firefighter Kevin Brown for taking E87-2 to a drive-by birthday for Riker. You may have read about Riker. He's a child that's been really, really ill here lately.
His grandfather was a police officer for us. Yep. Mr. Lyons, Sergeant Lyons.
Going to move on to the Seaford Police Department. Chief Kraft submitted a full and detailed report. You'll see the columns with 2023 year-to-date and the previous four years. Would like to note under burglary, as I mentioned previously, there's 30 burglaries filed. 12 of those were theft from vehicles. These are classified differently. They're not technically burglaries, and that's why the chief wanted to make that distinction. Under all crimes, there were 159, 15 adults, defendants of 15 adults and 1 juvenile, 12 felonies, 28 misdemeanors, 3 violations, 1 civil, and 115 other, for an 84% clearance rate. Under additional crime data that you'll see in the crime view below, there were 17 complaints consisting of aggravated assault, fraud, larceny, sex offense, and weapons charges. 8 were felony and 9 were misdemeanors. This all excludes shoplifting for an 18% clearance rate, and you'll see that there are several pending active, 6 pending inactive, and it goes on down the line. Under drug complaints, there were 12 drug complaints, 9 adult arrests, and 3 prosecution decline. Under traffic, 218 traffic contacts with 100 citations and 14 warnings, 2 DUIs, and no crash-related. Under crashes, there were 22 in the period. 3 injury accidents, 6 non-reportable, 13 reportable, and 6 hit-and-run accidents. You'll see a list of significant events here. I will highlight there we go. On March 17th, Seaford Police responded to a large fight located on Front Street. Extended investigation revealed that the defendant, Kanye Kellum, displayed a firearm during the fight. Based on witness statements at the scene, warrants were obtained against Kellum for the following charges. Help me out here. PF-DCF.
Will be possession of a firearm by a person prohibited, possession of a firearm during commission of a felony.
Okay. So PF-DCF is during the commission of a felony, and possession of a firearm by a person prohibited is the PFBPP. So I can't keep them straight. There's so many of them. And disorderly conduct. So on 3/27, Kellum was arrested on active arrest warrants, video arraigned before JP Court 2, and committed to SCI in default of $70,000 cash bond. It should be noted that Kellum was also out of jail pending a pretrial investigation when this incident occurred, which was also related to a weapons charge. So we thank the department and the work of the police officers for taking action on this wanted individual. So I'll move down to events. On March 15th, did we have a slide? Did I pass the slides?
I think we do, Gary, if you don't mind. There you go.
Yeah, so on most Wednesday nights, I've had the privilege of sitting in on some of these classes. You got some very dedicated people from the community that are attending these classes. And the chief, if you don't make tomorrow night's class, which I highly recommend that you come and interact with these folks, the chief has asked that I extend an invitation for the April 5th. That'll be the final night when there will be a sort of a ceremony at the end to grant the certificates, and I think that there will be food there, so we'll attract you with some food. So, yeah, so would highly recommend you attend.
What time is that?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, thank you.
So on March 23rd, the police department was almost completely represented at the funeral of Aaron Manso. I had the honor of attending that, and the honor guard that escorted her out was really moving. So I want to thank the department for doing that for Aaron. She was a beloved staff member, and that's where I wanted to.
Okay, thank you very much. Next we have Code, Parks and Rec. Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start with Parks and Recs. Repairs have been made to monkey bars and reinstalled at Jay's Nest, and they're currently assessing some other troubled areas for repair for the spring season. And they cut up old electric poles and repurposed them into parking barriers at Williams Pond. And Bobby has attended 2 classes at Rutgers for the Public Grounds Management Certificate. And they are busily setting up and preparing soccer fields for the upcoming season. And they're currently working on finding and scheduling referees. And the Men's Spring League will begin the week either of April 10th or the 17th. And preparations are upcoming for Easter egg hunt, where they already presented, and the Lighted Up Blue event, which is 4/3. And a big thank you to the staff that assisted with coverage for the rec office while Katie and Tina were both out. And we'll switch hats and go to code. Rental inspections are being completed for 2023. Rental license and rental license late fees were sent out February the 1st. Paving is expected to begin this week, and permits were issued to Ryan Homes for 3 lots. And construction has started on the first 5 lots at Bel Air Single Family Homes on Danfield Drive, and all the work is routine. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Next, Electric, Councilman Cord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hit a few highlights of the report. Since the last report, the crew has pulled 2 poles in Kiwanis Park that had to be removed. The infrastructure was cut off. They completed the monthly substation checks, pulled in a new fiber cable on Herring Run Road, and cut trees in the industrial park for the new fence. They also pulled 3 poles in Williams Pond Park for Little League on that particular topic. Got a call from Little League on Saturday. by Monday, they had pulled the poles that quickly. And the Lily was very appreciative of that. Regarding the director, had a standard director's meeting, council liaison meeting, and staff meeting, and attended Mike Rappa's 25-year gathering. Over the course of the next few weeks, they have, our director has federal jury duty, picking up truck number 19 to put a heater in the hydraulic tank, and start working on Muirfield 1, Phase 3. And I believe, do we have slides also? Here we go. So, a few slides up here. Now, this is a very detailed and informative slides. I won't go over all the information on here, but in essence, what these slides detail is across the country in the last few months, there have been an increased number of physical attacks on electric substations across the country. They give some details about specific attacks. There was one in the Pacific Northwest just this past November, and there was one this past December in Moore County, North Carolina. And to give you an idea, the ballistic attack resulted in approximately 45,000 outages. So it's a pretty serious deal across the country. I'll speak locally about it. Our electric department, with the help of our police department and our chief, take these securities very seriously and do a phenomenal job of ensuring that the city of Seaford does not befall something like this. But it's a very serious issue. If you have time, check out the slides. They're very informative. But that's been my report.
Thank you very much. Finally, wastewater treatment, Public Works, Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report has been submitted in its entirety. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. I appreciate all the information and detail that Director Mears puts into this, but I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. The team has been out in the community continuing to replace fire hydrants. Washington, Pine, Cedar, and 4th Street are just some of the examples on where they've been replaced. They had to pull the sweeper head and rebuild with new curtains and gaskets. The team partnered with the code department and they cleaned up a property in Robin Circle. They serviced truck 911 and 24 and they filled in some ruts on Pine Street. I'm going to jump over to the wastewater treatment facility. All is operating well, which is a good thing. Plant performance remains good and they continue to perform maintenance needed to lift certain lift stations. Some of the activities that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks, so they're going to rebuild the Manor House pump. They're going to put some water services on Shipley Street. They're going to repair cleanouts on the smoke testing list and just continue all routine tasks. I think I've got some slides to show too.
No, sir.
Oh, okay, next week.
Again, appreciate everybody's time. There's a lot going on in our city. We're growing quickly, and that doesn't happen without the great work of a lot of staff. So appreciate everybody's hard work. And with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion from Councilman King. Is there a second?
I'll second.
McCoy seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.